I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where we talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today I'm joined by Mr. Richard Tierney. He is here to share a trauma recovery program that he is the runner of. It's a new 12-step program that teaches individuals to heal completely from any mental health disorder diagnosis caused by any past trauma memory. So he's here to share the program and help tell a little bit more about it and share some tips. So thank you, Richard, so much, so much for coming on today. I cannot wait to hear this program. You and me were talking before we got started, and I'm a huge advocate for mental health, and I always love to have guests on like you that are open to share this kind of recovery and treatment. So thank you for coming on, and I cannot wait for you to share this wonderful, wonderful program with me today.
No, thanks very much. Really great to be here. I'm very excited to be here, folks. This is something completely, it kind of goes against mainstream mental health, but it's something that I'd like to, if I can imagine, if I could just treat you guys as one of my clients right here and now. I'm going to take you through the process. Probably the best way of doing it to give you an idea of what I'm doing. So I would ask my clients in this moment to take a sheet of paper, well, actually two sheets of paper, but one sheet of paper first off, and put your name of who you are today and your age. So in your case, Noah, it might be 27-year-old Noah at the top of your page, okay? Your age you are today and your name today. And then on this page, you write an autobiography of who you are today, not including the past or what's happened in the past, just who you are today. So who's in your life with you? If you've got a partner, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and so on, siblings. If you still live in the family home or if you've moved to another state or another town or another city, and put as much information in about who you are, only about who you are on the sheet of paper, all your interests, all your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, and fill that out as much as possible. To really go into detail about everything about you as a person today, your likes, your dislikes, whatever it is, politics, put everything in there that sums up who you are. Nothing to do with the past or the future, just in these 24 hours, who is Noah May? You'd write this all down on a sheet of paper. And then put that to one side and take up a second sheet of paper. And you consider the younger aspect of you, and we all have a younger aspect who suffered something. It may be a loss of a parent or a loss of a pet. It might have been changing school. It might have been bullied or teased. Or in my case, it might have been a trauma. But you know who that child is, what age he was. Maybe it's last year, maybe it's 5 years ago, maybe it's a 12-year-old Noah. And since you're called Noah today, it is a nickname we can give him. So for me, I'm Richard, 64-year-old Richard today. And for me, the younger version of me was a 12-year-old child called Richie. So on his page, I write down 12-year-old Richie. And then I put all the information about who he was back then. So he lived with his parents. He lived in the family home. His grandparents were alive. His aunts and uncles were alive. He was attending school, who his friends were back then, and what his hopes and dreams were. And then when we're finished all that, and you really go into detail on both sheets, you can clearly see we're not the same person. We're two different people. I'm an elderly man, 64 years of age, married with two children. My parents are dead. My grandparents are dead. All my uncles and aunts are dead, bar one. One of my siblings died of leukemia. That young 12-year-old child, his parents are alive. He's living in the family home. He's living in Ireland. I'm living in Thailand. When we do this, we see clearly that we're not the same person. And the only person who can heal us is ourselves. So we have to really be able to separate who we are today from that younger version of who we were. In the mental health industry, we're kind of conditioned to take the past into the present and suffer it for our younger self. That we're not abandoning our younger self. We're saving our inner child. We're taking our inner child on play dates, and we're fighting the fight for them, whatever. And all we're doing is we're destroying our life in the present by bringing the death and decay of a dead thing into the present. And it's eating away at everything. It's eating away at our soul, and it destroys everything it touches and everyone it touches. We look at our relationships being destroyed, intimate relationships, with partners, with parents, with families, because we have this baggage we're walking around with it, and it's just eating away and destroying everything around us. So we have to find a way of separating who we are today from that younger version of ourselves. So then I would say to my client, imagine, if you will, you're having a conversation with your younger self, and they're looking at you now and they're saying, Noah, would you please return my baggage to me? I need to leave this plane of existence, which is very painful for me, but I want to step into the light. And to go, you need to give me back my baggage. I can't leave until I have all my baggage. And you see your younger self saying to you, please give me back my baggage. The details of what happened to me. It didn't happen to you. It's destroying your life in the future. Please give it back to me. I suffered, endured, survived, and overcame that trauma. So you'll be free to have a life beyond my wildest dreams in your future. And to see you take my past into your present and suffer it, it's destroying everything I sacrificed for you. So you have this visual holistic practice conversation with your younger self, and you see the truth of it, that you've made a mistake. You're not a bad person. You didn't mean anything by it, but you are led to believe that it's your obligation to carry this into the present and suffer it. But you can't change the past. It's humanly impossible to change it, to fight the battles of another person or to suffer the pain for them, no matter who they are, even if they're our inner child. It's not possible. You're only in existence in these 24 hours today. And your life today is made up of running this podcast, having relationships with your partner and your family or your friends. And that's where your whole life is today. And what happened in the past, you can't change it. We can't change the past in any way, shape, or form. And bringing it into the present is the worst thing we do. We've been conditioned to believing that it's our responsibility. But if we have that conversation with a younger self, what I try to tell my clients is, today I'm 64 years of age. And if I was going through some terrible hardship today, I would get through it so that an older version of me, maybe 10 years' time, wouldn't have to deal with that. But if I'm looking into the future and I see this older version of me going into the attic of his mind and pulling a chest from the corner and taking out my baggage of today and putting it on his shoulders and going around telling everybody in the future that what happened to me today happened to him, I'd be a bit pissed off. I'd be a bit kind of, what the hell are you doing? Leave my crap alone and live your own life. And that's what our younger self is trying to tell us. Leave my crap alone and live your own life. And when you look at your sheet, you see there's so much on your plate today, Noah, with your partner and your family and your friends and your work and just podcasts. There's so much there. If you're investing in the past and suffering the past, you really can't focus on what's available to you in the present. So this program I created, I'm a member of 12-Step Recovery myself. I came through a gambling addiction and an alcohol addiction because I suffered a trauma when I was a child. And I just wanted to escape. It wasn't that I didn't want to die, I didn't want to live. And so I drank and I gambled on it. And I think if I'd come to know drugs, I would have become a drug addict. For me, it was gambling first and then alcohol. And alcohol was a breath of fresh air because I could drink myself to sleep. I could have a blackout, and the greatest thing ever for me was a blackout. Didn't have to live with my head and what happened to me and the nightmares eating away at me. They blacked them out. It was wonderful, but I developed those addictions very quickly. I was introduced to the 12-Step program. I love the concept of not being a victim and healing myself. That was the idea of the 12-Step program. They talk about we can't change anybody else. And that really hit home. I can't change what happened to the 12-year-old child. It's none of my business. But I can change who I am today and what I focus on today. That's the essence of a 12-step program. And you do the whole 12 steps to change me. That we live one day at a time, in the present only, focusing on this day only. And then your higher power is your mentor who takes you through the program, the 12-step program you're doing, all the literature. You go to your library, get all the literatures and videos. You go into Spotify, you go into YouTube. There's so much resources out there you can tap into. So you find a higher power. And then the God idea is that this is really important, I feel, and it's hard for folks who aren't in AA to kind of get the God. They try to jump on a higher power and they kind of don't want to go with the God thing. But the original founders of AA, they were God-fearing men, and what they felt was they didn't want to tie it to any denomination. So they said, God, as you understand him, meant it was God, but you could be a Catholic or a Protestant or a Presbyterian or Anglican or a Baptist or a Jehovah. You could be any denomination you want, and you could have God. But it wasn't a case of, they were afraid that there were so many Catholics in America at the time that the Catholic would take control, and you had to be a Catholic, and that wouldn't work for the Protestants or whatever. So they said, God of your understanding. So if there's 45,000 different churches and denominations in the world, pick one, or don't pick any. I didn't pick any. I left my Catholic faith, and now I just have a relationship with God. I talk to him every day. I talk to him about 10 times a day. I give him all my crap. I kind of go, okay, I'm meeting Noah today for a podcast, and I really want to speak in a slow and clear voice and hopefully carry some message of hope to his audience. Please help me to speak slowly. And that's my prayer before I come on with you. And then I come on to meet you and have a great conversation. And here we are having our podcast.
I think that this program it's such a nice program because, so many people deal with all kinds of different mental health disorders, whether it's from depression, anxiety, PTSD, if they suffer from bipolar disorder or from schizophrenic disorder, or just anything similar to that. There's not, it feels real comforting to have a program out there that helps them deal with it. But a lot of people I know that probably have questions about it. So I think one of the questions was when they're first starting out in this recovery program, how does an individual deal with forgiving their past?
I love this question. I'm not saying that being funny or anything. There's a couple of things we need to know. The, the great thing about the Christian faith, it says there's a passage in the Bible where you probably heard this or you've read this, you're taught in school at one stage, but Jesus was falsely accused and he was committed to be crucified, and he stood before his accusers, and they lied so they could have him crucified. So he goes to the cross, and on his cross he says, "Father, please forgive them; they don't know what they're doing." And the message is, and if you read the Bible, and I was raised a Roman Catholic in Ireland, and I was told as a child, because I was baptized with water, my place in heaven was assured. I never had to go to church or do anything. Because I was baptized with water as a child, my place in heaven was assured. And I think of all my family who believe that. And then as you get into life later and you read the Bible and you start learning about the faith, it's not enough just to be baptized with water. You have to be baptized with the Spirit. And I never knew that. I never knew that. That's a shock to the system. I learned in my 50s. So anyway, to get back to forgiveness, the Bible says that if I have a resentment against the person who abused me at the age of 12, and I hold on to that anger and I seek for vengeance or justice, and when I get it, I don't get it, because I held on to the anger, at the end of that person's life, they get into heaven. Because I searched for vengeance on this earth, they get a free pass into heaven. But if I give my anger to God and let God place his wrath on that person, then he will go to hell for all eternity. And I was thinking, if I went and got this guy done up for molesting me, he might get a slap in the wrist. He might get into jail for 6 months and be out in 3 months for good behavior. He could get 2 years and be out in 6 months for good behavior. Would that be equal to the pain and suffering I suffered and loss of innocence? Not a chance. But just the idea that if I give my anger to God and then I pray for this person, now I don't do it to his face. He never knows I'm praying for him. But if I give my anger to God and pray for him, God will remove him from my head. He's no longer pressing buttons. He's no longer pushing my buttons on my head. He leaves my psyche. And I know that when he dies, he's going to go to the fires of hell for all eternity. And seven generations of his descendants. And for me, that's equal to the loss of innocence I suffered as a 12-year-old child. So I did that where I said, okay, God, I give you this person. I don't even remember his name. I blocked it out so much. I give you this person who abused me. I give him into your care to mete out justice to him. I pray that he has a wonderful life on this earth. Everything I want in my life, I want him to have. I pray he has the most wonderful, um, prosperous life on this earth. And I keep saying that every single day until after a while, God says, okay, Richard is okay with this. I'll take him from him. And then he's gone from my mind. So if I'm walking down the street and I see the person, or I hear his voice or I hear his sound, I'm not triggered. Whereas normally, if I saw that person anywhere near me, I'd fall apart. But by giving him to God and he leaves my psyche, he doesn't press my buttons anymore. So if you're married to a narcissist and you know every time you meet your narcissist or you see them or they say something, you fall apart, will you pray for that person, give them to God? Suddenly you see the person, they've got no power or control over you. It's a really wonderful thing to do. We can't do this with tablets, we can't do this with medication. But if we make a decision ourselves, you don't have to join any church. Just decide, okay, God, I'm going to try this thing. And I don't like the word God, so I'm going to use Rich's God. I'm going to say, okay, Rich's God, I'm going to give you my abusers. The fuckers are still in my life. They're my parents or my uncles or whatever. I'm giving them to you today to mete out your vengeance and justice on them. And I'm going to do this by praying for them over and over again. I want them to be happy. And silently, when no one's looking, in your bedroom or out for a walk, I pray for this fecker that he'll be happy. I pray he'll be happy. I pray he'll be happy. And suddenly you find one day you don't think about it anymore. He's left your psyche. That's the way it was for me, and that's for anyone. The man who shared this with me, that worked for him too.
So how does an individual deal with the shame and guilt of what happened? Which, I have the thing where if it's something real traumatic that happens to you, I wouldn't be real shameful of it or have guilt because it was out of your control. But some people do feel that they have shame and guilt. So how do you what approach do you tell people to have if they're have that shame and guilt of what happened? How do you tell them how can they deal with it?
Thank you for your question again. Really powerful. Your audience are very blessed to have you asking the right questions. Okay, so we go back to that very first exercise. Okay, you have to separate you from the child. For me, a 12-year-old child was abused. This 64-year-old man wasn't abused. And that's the honest to God truth. I'm only alive in these 24 hours today. I'm not the same person I was yesterday. I'm not the same person I was last week. So I can't say I was abused at the age of 12 because I was never 12. This 64-year-old man was never 12. He's always been 64 years of age. And next year I'll be 65 years of age and I won't be 64 ever again. So when you learn that you accept that I exist only in this moment, and that 12-year-old child can fight his own battles. And what I mean by that is I wouldn't be alive today if that 12-year-old child had succumbed to the abuse. But that 12-year-old child survived and overcame it. And how do I know that? Because I'm standing today. I'm alive today. If that child had given up and thrown in the towel, I wouldn't be in existence today. But the fact that I am in existence means they defeated their trauma. They overcame it. And if they overcame it, they don't want me giving life to it. Again, if I bring it into my present and give life to it, I'm betraying my younger self and I'm self-sabotaging my life by allowing a dead thing to destroy everything it touches. So we have to separate ourselves from our younger self. That's the first. And once we do that, it's not our business who did what to whom. It didn't happen to us. That person didn't abuse the person I am today, so it's none of my business. If that person came into my life today, I'd clobber him. He wouldn't get anywhere near me. I'm a 64-year-old man now. I'd see him coming a mile away, and he wouldn't get close to me. I'd clobber him. He wouldn't have a hope in hell of getting anywhere near me. Okay? So it didn't happen to me. And this is what we have to really help the client to see. It didn't happen to you, Noah. If it happened at 12 years of age, it happened to a 12-year-old child. He didn't have a beard. He wasn't living where you're living now. He isn't running a podcast. He's not an adult in a relationship or whatever. It was this young child that suffered the trauma. For me, it was a 12-year-old boy called Richie who suffered the trauma. But he was living with his parents. My parents are dead. He was living in Ireland 7,000 miles away. I'm living in Thailand 7,000 miles away. I've got to see that we're not the same person. We can't keep going back to, I was abused. I have this anger at the past. It didn't happen to me. It's none of my business. We really have to. That's the only way you're going to ever recover. If you choose to think it happened to you and you to suffer it, there's never going to be any recovery for you whatsoever. You're going to go to your grave carrying this pain, fighting this pain that didn't happen to you. And the more you fight it, you'll understand. I remember working with a young person before. They'd been in therapy for 20 years, on 20 different medications, 25 different therapists. Now, if the first therapist doesn't help you and the second therapist doesn't help you, at some stage either they've been misdiagnosed and they didn't have that condition, or the solution that they're offering doesn't work. Because you shouldn't be in therapy for the rest of your life for something that happened in the past. If you went to a doctor with your broken leg, and the doctor said, "Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put your leg in a cast. I'm going to give you medication for the pain. I'm going to send you back out working again." What would happen? You'd get gangrene, your leg would fall off. So science says we have to treat the cause and not the effect. The cause is what happened in the past. The effect is the diagnosis, the schizophrenia, the depression, the post-traumatic stress, the anxiety. They're all the effect. And that effect actually is you coping with the past trauma and memory. So in my instance, I was abused as a 12-year-old child. After that, then I really use the practice of freeze. You know, this fight, flight, and freeze? I would freeze. I would disassociate. I would withdraw. I became an introvert. I would isolate. I would hide. I was very passive, very victim. But I would just, I would shut down. I would just leave. I'd go into my fantasy world. I would use the freeze in almost every situation up until I went into AA at 27 years of age. Even at that time, I would disassociate. It was the one coping skill that I wasn't strong enough to stand up for myself. And I didn't think I could get away because I'd been a victim. You never feel you can run fast enough or far hard enough. So I would just close my mind mentally and emotionally. Mentally and emotionally, I'd leave the building. My body would be there, but I'd leave the building and I wouldn't be there. Same as I remember I call in the abuse. I left, I just, in that 12-year-old space, I left the body mentally and emotionally. So I wasn't there for it. When I came back in, I felt the pain of it. But in the moment, I switched off and I left the building. And so you understand that I only exist in these 24 hours today. I'm having a podcast with you. It's my third one of the day. I'm having a really great fun doing these podcasts and speaking this truth. And I've got my wife and my kids are here. My son's on national service. The house is in tears. So if they're worried something's going to happen to him, he's 17, going off doing his national service. 10 days he's going to be away. He's not allowed any phone or any tablet. He has to be in an army camp with another 300 boys. And like, that's where my life is today. And it's not as a 12-year-old child in Ireland 50 years ago. So the forgiveness about it, it's not our business to forgive it. It's none of our business. We have to just let it go. And what we do then is we give it to God. Okay, God, it didn't happen to me. Watch over my 12-year-old younger self. Take him home, keep him safe, and make his abusers suffer. I give them all to you freely.
How is a person expected to stop seeking vengeance or justice for what they experience?
Again, you keep going back to they experienced it. So you have to understand, if it's yourself, Noah, if it happened to you this today, then you're meant to experience it. You're meant to, and if it happened this week, you're meant to, if it happened in this year, you're entitled to experience the event of it. But if it happened more than a year ago, it's no longer about you. If we're conditioned to keep going back to it and keep suffering it, there can be never any hope of recovery. Because I can't fix you, Noah. You can't fix me. I can only fix myself. And I have to understand that I'm not a 12-year-old child. Every time I think of the pain that happened, I'm not a 12-year-old child. It didn't happen to this 64-year-old man. It happened to a 12-year-old child. I'm not a 12-year-old child, so it didn't happen to me. That's basically the mantra you've got to keep saying to yourself 10, 20, 30 times a day. The other thing is to say it happened to you, but as you begin to do these things like the 2 pages, you begin to realize you're living a lie. You're looking for meaning in something that happened in the past where you're meant to get meaning in the present. The idea is that in the present, we let go of the past. Your podcast is you rising out of the ashes like a phoenix, and you're carrying the message to so many people and helping the people recover. I came out of the ashes so I can carry this message of hope to others, and they can follow on and get their lives back. We look for meaning in the present. We don't look for it in the past because it didn't happen to us. So if we're going on saying, yeah, my meaning to life is I was abused as a child, that's not a real meaning. That's us living a lie. I know it's very hard to say because when it was said to me, I was furious. My sponsor in AA said to me, "Isn't it time you let that go?" And I went, "You bastard, you can't say that. I was abused. You can't say let it go. Who do you think you are suggesting I should let it go? I suffered this, blah, 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 whatever." But then because of the abuse, I'd never let one man get close to me ever again. So here I was with a sponsor, 2 years. We'd done the 12 steps. I shared a lot of stuff with him. And I realized I didn't want to throw away this relationship because it's the first time I'd ever let a man get close to me. So I said I would look at what he was saying to me and try and work out why he said what he said, because it didn't make sense to me why he would dare say to me, it's time to let it go. Like that seemed to be such a hurtful thing to say. A sponsor shouldn't say to a sponsee, what's he thinking about? But as I got thinking about this, I got more into the idea that it didn't happen to me. It happened to a 12-year-old child, and I'm a 64. At that time, I'm a 52-year-old man. If I'm a 52-year-old man, I'm not a 12-year-old child, so it didn't happen to me. And that's what I really focused on. And I did all those exercises with the sheets of paper. And I had to see. And then there's another exercise I recommend to my clients. And what you do is you get a sheet of paper. At the top, with your dominant hand, you write. So for me, I write, Dear Richie, dear 12-year-old Richie. And at the bottom, I put down, Love, 64-year-old Richard. And then on this page, I would speak my truth about who I am today. And I'd like to let go of the past. And how would he feel about me letting go of the past so I can focus on being the present? And I did that page, and I turned the page over. And with my non-dominant hand, so I'm left-handed, so with my right hand, I write, Dear 64-year-old Richard. At the bottom, I write down, Love, 12-year-old Richie. Because of my right hand, I don't write my right hand, it's like a child writing. It's like a real scroll. And then I let the pen work. Now, because I'm writing with my non-dominant hand, my subconscious mind is activated. When I put pen to paper, it's not me in control of what I write. What I write is coming from, I can't believe it, but what I'm writing is a 12-year-old child's writing back to me. I never asked you if I can carry this shit. I've been trying to leave this plane for 50 years trying to get your attention. What came up for me in that letter was profound. I heard a perspective from my subconscious mind, from my inner child telling me, let me go. Like it was a shock to the system. I'm thinking it was my duty and obligation to carry this stuff. And here's this guy telling me, give it back to me. I want to go. So those two exercises were very powerful for me in understanding it was none of my business.
Does it actually take 3 hours to heal a lifetime of suffering?
Well, that's the challenge. The suffering, unfortunately, it sounds terrible to say it, but it was said to me, the suffering is a choice that we make. We choose to suffer someone else's pain. So we have to slash that idea ourselves. Okay, we have to realize, like that second letter where you write to your younger self and write back to you, that I've been suffering this needlessly. It wasn't mine to suffer. I chose to suffer this for my younger self, so I have a meaning to my life. And it's very hard because we get involved with support groups. We got support groups for the abuse, and you're always around company of other people who are talking about their abuse, and it's very easy to get into that frame. So suddenly, if I do this work and I give up my past, does that mean I have to leave my support group? And I've got all my friends who are in my support group, and all my community are other victims, and we have this whole kind of network. And Richard's saying to me, in 2 hours I'm going to be free of it. I don't know if I want to be free of all my friends and all that connection and all that identification. I don't know if I want that. So it's a big challenge for everybody. It's like the alcoholic doesn't really want to give up drink forever. Can I give it up for a week and then have it at the weekends kind of stuff? So it's a real challenge to the person to understand that what happened in the past didn't happen to you or I. And that's the truth. That's the only truth, but the truth that set us free. And if we can fully accept that. So again here, yes, last week Charlie Kirk was alive. I like listening to Charlie Kirk. I love his talk about being a family and look after the family and nurture children and give them a good life. I love your man, what's your man's name? Ben Shapiro. Again, he talks about if we could leave children alone till they're 25 years of age and let them just be themselves, whatever they want to be. At 25, they can be anything they want to be, but let's leave them grow as a child. So when you're growing up, when you're born, for the first 4 years of life, you live with your parents, and hopefully it's a healthy, loving family you're with parents and grandparents doting on you. And then for me, I brought down to play school, and my parents left me there. I felt I was being abandoned. I was crying my eyes out, "Don't leave me!" And they went away, thinking they're abandoning me. But they picked me up after school, and I learned that it was okay. But for the first time, I experienced abandonment. And then 4 years in that play school, I learned about being with other kids, whatever, and I learned that kind of feelings and emotions. And then from about 9 to 13, I'm in junior school, and I'm building friendships, but also having to do with responsibility, getting homework done, and getting reprimanded for not having your homework done. And in our days, the teacher could hit you. You had a big leather strap, and he'd slap you across the fingertips, or you had a cane, and he'd hit you across the fingertips with a cane, or you'd bend you over and hit you across your bum with a cane, or a leather strap. That was part of our growing up, and it was perfectly normal. So you learned about the repercussions of not getting your homework done or not misbehaving in school. So again, you learned again boundaries about your feelings and emotions. And then you get to 13, and from 13 to 19, you're experiencing romance and falling in love with boys and girls and whatever, and being rejected and being a bad, being and they rejecting you and you rejecting them, and all that kind of stuff you learn from 13 to 19 and going for your dates and whatever. And then at 19, you maybe move out of home and you move into a house. And for the first next 4 or 5 years, you learn to be an independent adult. And then, if the child wants to change their sex or go onto medication, they're old enough to be part of the solution. But the idea of, I feel that the idea of targeting children as young as 10, either with medication or with some other sex thing, and saying change now, I think that's wrong. And I like when Ben Shear made the argument about the 25. So what happened in the past didn't happen to us. So last week, Charlie Kirk was alive, and I used to love listening to what he had to say because I'm a family man. I've got 2 kids. I'm married, and I believe in God. So I like everything he said about protecting children, you know. And now he's gone, and I know I'm not the same person I was as I was last week because I got a great sense of hope listening to him. But now he's gone, so I'll never be the same again because he's no longer in my life. Now, if you hated Charlie Kirk and he's gone, you won't be the same again because you haven't got something to hate on. So whatever your relationship is with Charlie Kirk, he's no longer in your life. He's gone. So you're changed as a person because he can't affect you. You know that kind of stuff? If your mother dies and she was abusive in the past and she's gone from your life now, you're changed because you're no longer suffering her being abusive to you. So you're not the same person, say, as you were before. So we have to find some way of understanding we're not the same person we were in the past.
Is PTSD kind of seen as the problem, or is it seen as the solution?
That's a fabulous question. PTSD for you and I, if we're the client, it was our solution. To cope with our trauma, we acted out. We had nightmares, we had flashbacks, we may have been angry or sad, we may have drank. Our behaviors, the mental health professionals diagnosed as a mental disorder, but they were our coping skills. If we didn't act the way we acted, we might have killed somebody or killed ourselves. So we acted out with anger or frustration, or we heard the voices, or we were doing whatever. They were our coping skills. And a mental health professional tells us that's the problem. Now they're treating our coping skills as the problem, but not the problem is the past trauma. And if we, it's like the cause and effect. The cause is the past trauma. The effect is our coping skills, which have been diagnosed as PTSD or depression. If we continue to treat the effect, how it manifests in our lives, depression, PTSD, whatever, we're never going to get healed. We have to go back and heal the cause. So the 3 hour practice I was going to explain to you was the first 2 hours is giving the past, the details of the past back to your younger self. So I went through a process where I gave the details back to my 12-year-old younger self. I had this visualization conversation where he said, give me back my crap, Richie, give me back my baggage. And I went, okay, here it is. And when I did that, I felt the release in my body, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, like a great weight lifted from my shoulders. And once that was gone, and I do an exercise where I get the clients at the beginning of the practice to give a score for their trauma. And then at the end, review the score and see if there's been a shift in their energy. And in every case, the shift is phenomenal. Like it goes from -70 to +30. Like it's just huge, the shift when you suddenly realize it's gone. And then we did the 12-step program to undo the learned dysfunction behaviors of the diagnosis. So being in AA, I've been trying to write a 12-step program for trauma. I looked around at many 12-step programs, and all they basically did was they took out the word alcohol and replaced it with trauma. And that doesn't work because alcohol is about not taking the first drink, gambling about not having the first gamble, drugs about not taking the first drug. But this, when we give the past back to our younger self, there's no abstaining from it because it's gone from our psyche. So we have to find a different way of looking at it. So I wrote a 12-step program that's slightly different to the AA way, but based on the AA steps, sent it off to AA, and I got a message back saying it would take about 3 months for them to decide whether this would be approved or not. And 2 days later, I got a letter from AA saying, this is the 14 12-step program. We approve it. So now there's the 14 12-step program available is the first one for trauma called Trauma Recovery Anonymous. And it's a 12-step program for the treatment of trauma. And in this instance, we're ridding ourselves of the learned behaviors of the mental disorder diagnosis.
When it comes to the diagnosis of mental health disorders, what is wrong in your opinion with the concept of how these mental health disorders are diagnosed?
Great question. Okay, first of all, let me say that I believe mental illness is a mental illness that has to be treated by mental health professionals. But mental disorder is an opinion. So let's imagine for 1 minute you have a sore tooth, and you go to the dentist with your sore tooth. And the day you go, there's no pain in your tooth. You won't say to your dentist, "No, my tooth's fine," and go home. You'll tell him how bad it could be. You'll describe how bad it could be. Same if you have a sore foot and you get to the doctor and the foot's okay. You don't cancel your appointment and go home. You say, no, it can be really sore, and you give them all the examples of it. And the same thing with mental illness or mental disorders. When you go to see a therapist, if you're feeling okay on that day, you don't suddenly don't say anything and go home. You tell them how bad it can be. So you say, well, on Monday I had the most ferocious nightmares. On Tuesday I had terrible triggers. On Wednesday I had terrible flashbacks. Yesterday I was so stressed in the morning. I was so angry I wanted to kill somebody. And then I had such depression. Last week I suffered terrible depression for about 3 days. And I believe that mental health professionals take all of these symptoms, put it together, and they come up with, you have major depressive disorder, or you have major post-traumatic stress disorder. You tick all the boxes by what you share. But the thing is, I believe we're all quite lucid. I believe that we're all capable of managing our day where we have these moments where we are out of sync. But the mental health profession, these guys, they've got like 10 or 20 clients coming in a day, and they're trying to get them all done and take care of everybody. And it's this very stressful job to be carrying people's load and hearing people. And I'd say they just kind of, if you come in and you present with X, Y, and Z, they put you in this box. They don't do it in a non-caring manner. But there's so many people nowadays diagnosed with mental. 1 billion people have been diagnosed with mental disorders, and there's probably only about maybe 1 million therapists. So can you imagine dividing out 1 billion therapists, billion clients with a million therapists? It's like 100 per therapist. You're inundated with seeing clients that you nearly have to just, it's coming so fast. It's like a sale. You're going to get them done as quickly as possible. So I think that comes into it an awful lot. And you can be diagnosed based on what you present with, but that's not the truth. Because in my case, I was diagnosed with depression. I shared about my abuse and about the nightmares and the flashbacks and about the days when I felt really, really depressed and really down on myself, whatever. And I was prescribed with medication for my depression. And then I found that I was taking the medication, and it would numb me to any of my feelings. I had no feelings whatsoever when I took medication. I'd go through my day, and I was just like a zombie. And I remember going to my work one day, and I'm walking up the road, and like this is 40 years ago in Ireland, when there were very few refugees. But we had an influx of refugees from Romania, and this woman's on the side of the road holding a baby, begging for money on the side of the road, and people walking past them, and there's a big kind of a crush in the people walking. And as I get level with her, I have to stop walking because there's someone in front of me. And she grabs my trousers leg, she's just pulling at my trousers leg, saying, please, can I have some money? And I shook my leg off. I shook her off my leg, and I went on to my work. I got home that evening, and the medication wore off, and I vomited with the shame and disgust that I had let this woman with a baby on the side of the road. I felt nothing for her. I felt no empathy. I felt no kindness, nothing at all for this human being. I'd walk past like she meant nothing to me, like she was dirt. And I felt really disgusted with it. So I went to the doctor the next morning. I said, I want to come off this medication. And he said, no, you can't. You've got to stay on it. And I said, okay. So I went home then. I phoned my brother. I said, I won't be into work give me my holidays now. I'm going to be in bed for 2 weeks because I need to get off this medication. It's killing me. And he said, okay. So I went to bed for 2 weeks, and it was the worst experience. I have to tell you, sweats, nightmares. It was horrible. But I stayed in the bed for 2 weeks. I lost weight, but I came out of it free of the medication. And I swore I'd never go back to medication. I never wanted to feel that way again. I never feel such disgust ever again. Now, once I stopped medication, all that stuff that had been suppressed came back. I was in tears. I mean, I was not in a healthy space at all. I went and told my doctor. He was furious, and he said, if I'd known you really want to do it, I would have got cut down to maybe a half a day for like a week, and then maybe a half every second day or something. I would have petered you off. I would never let you go cold turkey. Most people kill themselves to go to cold turkey. I don't know how you're still standing. And then he talked to me about drinking, taking some sugar occasionally and whatever, and this kind of stuff. And I got a therapist to work with outside of medication. But I just didn't want to be there again. I realized I was a zombie. This medication just switched off and I didn't want to not feel my feelings again. I'd prefer to feel my feelings and go back to where I'd have lucid moments and also have some bad moments, but I'd have some lucid moments.
If someone's struggling right now and they just don't know where to begin and where to start, what advice do you have for them on what they can do today to start getting the help that they need?
Okay, this is what I share. No, normally towards the end of a podcast, I share four things with my clients, and I'll share it with you now if I may. The first one is the family we grew up in may not be our tribe. For me, they weren't my tribe. I was a bit of a nerd, a geek, introverted, and my family were all outgoing, social animals, success driven, whatever. And no matter what I tried to do to fit in, I just never fitted in. Now, there's nothing wrong with them. They're perfectly healthy, middle class family who all connected. But I was a square peg in a round hole. I just didn't fit in any way, shape, or form. And no matter how much I tried, alcohol helped an awful lot to kind of fit in. But then I could never control the alcohol. And I go from not fitting in to fitting in with some alcohol and then getting drunk and making a show of myself. I was never able to get that level where I could stop to fit in, you know? I never fitted in. But we all have a tribe. And when we find our tribe, everything makes sense. So if you're living with the family and you don't fit in, whether because you've been diagnosed with mental disorder and they're all normal people and they don't see what you're doing and you try and explain and they don't get it and they don't understand it, know that there's a tribe out there for you. And when you find your tribe, you'll fit in. They'll accept you as you are, and you'll know everything. If you're gay or something, and you're living in family heterosexuals, and you've been living in the closet, no, one day you'll find your community of other gay people, and you'll feel so calm and relaxed. You may never meet your family of origin again, and that may happen. I'm living in Thailand. I haven't seen my family of origin for 11 years. And I'm okay with that. And they're okay with that. So what I do now is I write to my family. It takes a month for the letter to get to them now since COVID. It takes a month for the letter to get back. But they really appreciate getting a letter. And I can put all my stuff down on a letter and they get it, all my news. But having a conversation, I could press their buttons and they could press my buttons so easily. And letter's much easier. So you learn to find your own tribe. There's a tribe out there for you. Second one is to know that you're created for a reason. God doesn't make mistakes. He created you for a reason. Maybe like Noah, it's to create a podcast and carry a message to thousands of people around the world that there is a solution. Or maybe it's to myself. It gave me the ability to become a phoenix out of the ashes of my trauma. I can carry this message to people who are open to it and they break free. You were created for a reason. Don't think you're broken. Don't think you're a mistake. Don't think that anything like that is your fault. The next is to understand that we're never a victim. I realize now that as that 12-year-old child was abused, he wasn't the victim. The person who abused him was acting out his needs. And it happened that he invaded that 12-year-old child's space. The 12-year-old child wasn't in the wrong place. It wasn't his fault. The other person intruded his space to act out his needs. So the child was never the victim. So to give you an idea for today, if my boss decided to fire me today, it's not because he doesn't like me. It would be a case that he employed me to do a job for him. And I'm incapable of doing that job. And so he needs somebody to do that job. So he's going to look somebody else to replace me to do that job. It's not about he doesn't like me. It's about he wants somebody to do that job for him. And same way, if my wife divorced me today, it's not that she hates me. It's that I'm not fulfilling her needs and she wants someone to fulfill her needs. She's going to try and find somebody to fill that role for her. So when we get to start thinking we're not victims, everything in your life will change. If you can go from not being a victim, you're suddenly on the road to recovery. Because once we stop thinking we're victims, then we start thinking different thoughts about ourselves. We start feeling different thoughts. Suddenly we don't think that God hates us or society hates us or we're all broken. We think, I'm perfect just as I am. God's made a plan for me. I don't know what that plan is, but there's a plan for me. I'm still standing. Other people, what I've gone through would have floored an elephant. A lesser person probably would have given up already, but I'm still standing today. And that means there's some plan that God has for me that I don't even know about. And I even don't believe in God. I accept Richard's word that God has a plan for me, and someday I'm going to find it. When I find it, I'm going to be like Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King. I'm going to change the world. So I won't give up before the miracle happens. The next is to understand that you're never truly alone. You always have a higher power. So whether it's a podcast like Noah's podcast, or it's on Spotify or YouTube, it's a music you like listen to, or something that makes you laugh, or the sport you like, or a fitness or a hobby, painting or drawing, or you like exercise and being out in the outdoors. There's always something that'll lift your spirits. and you need never be alone. So I recall 17 years ago, after my son was born, I had to go to Ireland for business. I had to leave the day after he was born. I was frustrated and angry that I was leaving my wife and my child, but I had to come from Thailand back to Ireland. And I'm at Singapore airport on the journey over, and I'm going crazy in my head, like, when you're full of anger and rage and frustration. And I needed to do something. And I saw this guy. I think he's Japanese. I may have been wrong. Maybe he's Korean. But he was sitting there reading his paper. And I went over, sat beside him. And I looked at him and I said, "Do you speak English?" And he said, "A little bit." And I said, "Can I talk to you? You don't have to answer me, but I can talk at you for 5 minutes." And he went, "Okay." And I just spewed all my crap at this stranger for 5 minutes. I gave it all. I shared everything going on in my head, all the anger, frustration, blame, shame, blah, 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 blah. And he went, "My flight." And he walked away. And I felt such relief. I felt like I'd been heard. It felt such a fantastic relief. And today, my wife has a little Chihuahua dog. So I bring him for walks, no more than 100 yards. He's only a small fella, 50 yards there, 50 yards back. And when I go for a walk, when he's doing his pees and poos, I give him all my crap. I say to him, "Okay, Muffin." And I give him everything's in my head, whatever it is. And he doesn't hear me. He's doing his pees and poos, but I feel like I've been heard. And we get back to the house afterwards, and I feel like I've been heard. And I feel a release. So no, you're never truly alone. Okay? And the last one I'll say to you is, God answers all our prayers all day long. The prayers aren't what we learned in church or school or at our mother's knees. Our prayers are what are our self-talk. The things we say to ourselves when we think no one's listening. That's actually our prayers. So if I'm going around saying, "I am depressed, no one loves me, no one likes me, I can't get a job, I can't find a girlfriend, I can't find a boyfriend, I'll never be happy, I have no luck," these are my prayers, and God answers them tenfold. God gave us a book of instructions and free will on how to use it properly. But if we don't read the book and we don't follow the instructions, whatever we ask for, whatever we think of, that's what God gives us. Now, every spiritual tradition tells us what we focus on, we manifest into our lives. Whether you're an atheist or agnostic, you can buy the law of attraction, you can buy the law of promise, you can buy any book you want about manifestation, and it tells you whatever you focus on, you manifest in your life. So if you focus on, "My life is terrible, my life is shit, I'm full of suffering, my life is over, I can't have a life," they're your prayers, and that's what you get tenfold. So you have to learn to change your prayers. So you say something like, "Up until this morning, I believed that my life was shit and I have no chance of happiness." But listening to Noah and Richard on this podcast, I begin to realize that maybe I'm my own worst enemy, and I choose to declare, "I am happy, joyous, and free." And say that prayer 10 times, 20 times a day, every day for 30 days. And by day 10, I promise you, your life will change just by using that I'm happy, joyous, and free.
If people would like to get in contact with you, or if they have further questions about this topic, where's the best place that they can find you and stay connected with you?
My email address is richard@traumarecoveryanonymous.com. And you can email me there, and I'll get back to you, and I can meet you on Zoom or whatever. No problem at all. If you want to chat on Zoom or whatever for a conversation. And if you feel uncomfortable coming on your own, arrange to bring some friends with you. The more, the merrier. The great thing about this program is I can treat more than one person at a time. See, I don't want you to have to tell me your story. Okay, I never want you to tell me your story, because I know from experience, you go along and you tell some new person your story, and you can see the look in their eye like they've heard it all before, or they're fed up or something, or they've had a bad day, and it can really be demoralizing that you're attempting to tell them your story and they're not really listening to you, or they're not really interested. So what I do is I tell everybody we use one phrase for everybody. So for me, my abuse was a childhood. I suffered a loss of innocence. If you were a veteran and you saw the horrors of war, what man can do to man, you suffered a loss of innocence there. If you were married to a narcissist and he abused you, you suffered a loss of innocence there. If you were walking down the road and you were attacked one night by a gang or something, that was your loss of innocence. So we use one phrase for this exercise as loss of innocence. So if Noah came along with 4 of his friends, I would treat them all with loss of innocence. And they just do and then on their page, they don't show me their page. So Noah would put on his page his age today, and then the other side, his younger self, whatever that is, and doesn't tell me what it is. And then his friends do the same thing, and they don't share it to each other. But afterwards, they can share if they want to. And we do the exercise, and at the end, they tell me if there's been a shift in their energy. So it's a very simple process. It takes 2 hours to complete the process, and then I take you through the 12-step program of Trauma Recovery Anonymous to undo the learned behaviors of the dysfunction of the diagnosis.
Well, Richard, I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing this program with my listeners. It's something that's very important that I think a lot of people would feel and find very helpful and will find very beneficial. So I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing this with me. I'll put his email and I'll put his social media accounts in the description box below so that it's easy access for you guys. So if you have questions or would like to reach out to him, it'll all be there for easy access. Um, you're more than welcome to follow me on social media too. Instagram and TikTok, I'm there at Lethal Venom Podcast. On Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, it's Noah's Podcast. Feel free to follow those if you'd like to keep updates on those.
I'll do that.
And as always, listen to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcasts from. Available on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's all wherever you get podcasts from, so it's available there. So feel free to subscribe and get so you'll be notified when new episodes drop. Thank you to all my listeners for tuning in today. Hopefully you all learned some good information today. And again, if you feel stuck or anything, feel free to reach out to him and ask questions. He'll be happy to help. Appreciate to everyone listening. Hopefully have a great day and have a great rest of your week. Be safe, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.